In the heart of a small coastal town in Maine, the air was filled with the salty scent of the sea and the vibrant colors of summer. The local high school, Harborview High, stood proud against a backdrop of lush pine trees and a sparkling blue horizon. It was a typical day, with parents in smart attire, siblings holding celebratory banners, and elderly relatives with canes, all gathering for the graduation ceremony of the class of 2024. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the campus, Marcus Hale parked his faded blue pickup truck beside a rusted chain-link fence. He stepped out, adjusting the crisp lines of his dark navy uniform, a symbol of his service in the Coast Guard. His boots gleamed, not out of vanity, but as a tribute to the discipline he had learned over the years. Straightening his posture, he gazed at the bustling crowd, his calm demeanor masking the storm of emotions within. He had driven 6 hours from Boston to witness his son's graduation, choosing the old truck over a flight because it reminded him of his late wife, who had loved road trips with the family. Marcus opened the driver's door and retrieved a weathered photograph from the glove compartment. It was a cherished memory, showing his wife holding their infant son, Caleb, nestled against her shoulder. With a soft whisper, he said, "I promised you I wouldn't miss this," before tucking the photo safely into his jacket pocket. As he made his way to the entrance, each deliberate step resonated with purpose, a blend of pride and a lingering ache in his chest. The gymnasium was alive with energy. Parents cheered, kids laughed, and the sweet scent of cotton candy wafted through the air. At the entrance, Marcus presented his ticket to a volunteer, a young woman with a clipboard and a bright smile. She glanced over the ticket with a nod, directing him to the third row on the left. "You're all set. Family seating is right up front," she said enthusiastically. "Thank you," Marcus replied, his voice steady as he walked toward his seat, absorbing the atmosphere around him. He noticed a few curious glances directed his way, some people doing a double take at his uniform before quickly looking away, while one older gentleman offered him a nod of acknowledgement. Marcus didn't react. He had grown accustomed to such responses over the years. Settling into his seat, he adjusted the plastic chair that creaked under his weight. The stage was adorned with banners reading Class of 2024 in bold letters, and a handful of school board members shuffled papers at the podium. Marcus scanned the rows of students, his heart swelling with pride as he spotted Caleb among them. The tall, lanky boy with his mother's bright eyes was now a young man ready to take on the world. Memories flooded back of the day Caleb was born, when Marcus had rushed home from his deployment to witness the miracle of life. He sat still, taking in the moment, barely blinking as the chatter around him faded into the background. Chairs scraped, programs rustled, and a child's laughter rang out, but none of it reached him. His focus remained on the stage, the sea of eager faces, and the weight of the photograph pressing against his chest. As the familiar strains of pomp and circumstance filled the air, the audience rose to their feet. Some students looked nervous, while others beamed with joy. Marcus stood too, shoulders squared, arms at his sides. The national anthem followed, and while everyone placed their hands over their hearts, Marcus stood still, his presence a silent salute to the flag and to the sacrifices made. He thought of his wife and how she would have been emotional throughout the ceremony, fussing over Caleb's tie as she wiped away tears of joy. Then, as the last note faded, 2 security personnel approached from the aisle, moving with an air of authority. They wore navy blue uniforms with harbor security emblazoned on their shirts, earpieces in place, their expressions serious. One was stocky with a buzz cut, the other tall and lanky, chewing gum with a disinterested air. Marcus noticed them immediately but remained composed, his training instilling a calm resolve. He kept his gaze fixed ahead, hands resting on his thighs. The stocky guard leaned down, his voice low. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "We need you to come with us." Marcus turned his head slowly. "Is there a problem?" The tall guard stepped forward. "This section is for families of graduates only." Marcus blinked, then reached into his coat pocket for the ticket he had just shown at the door. "This is my seat. 3rd row left side." Family seating confirmed. The shorter guard didn't even glance at the ticket. We were informed it was full. Marcus remained motionless. It was full when I sat down too. Who gave that order? The tall guard shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't expected a calm, clear voice. It's not a big deal. There are extra seats in the back. Let's keep this from escalating. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but with quiet determination. I drove 6 hours to watch my son walk across that stage. I'm sitting right here. Heads began to turn. A woman too rose ahead, whispered to her companion, while someone in the bleachers discreetly angled their phone, likely recording the unfolding situation. The stocky guard straightened up and glanced around, sensing the tension. Sir, I'm going to ask again. You can ask all day, Marcus responded firmly. But I'm not moving. The tall guard clicked his tongue. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in the back. That's all we're suggesting. That phrase hung in the air, laden with implications that transcended mere logistics. It echoed a lifetime of experiences Marcus had endured. The atmosphere shifted, the tension palpable as others began to sense the gravity of the moment. The stocky guard adjusted his radio, muttering into the mic without breaking eye contact with Marcus, who remained seated, staring straight ahead, as if the conversation had concluded. Because for him, it had. An older woman seated nearby leaned toward Marcus and whispered, "Don't let them push you." He nodded slightly, acknowledging her support without a word. He didn't want a scene. He just wanted to watch his son graduate. But the guards were relentless. The tall one lowered his voice. "If there's a problem, you can take it up with the school office. We're just following orders." Marcus turned to look directly at him. "What's your name?" The guard blinked in surprise. "It's Officer Walsh." "Not an officer," Marcus corrected. "You're private security," the shorter guard interjected. "All right, that's enough. If you don't get up." He didn't finish his sentence, as the gym door at the far end swung open, revealing 6 men who walked in with a quiet confidence. No uniforms, no badges. Just strong postures, squared shoulders, and expressions that suggested they had faced far worse than this moment. They filtered in one by one, taking their places around the room, moving with the same calm alertness that had been honed through years of service. Marcus didn't have to look back to know who they were. He recognized them instantly, but the guards were oblivious, for now. Marcus kept his focus on the stage, his mind racing. He wasn't angry. Not yet. But a switch had flipped inside him. A survival instinct kicking in, ready for whatever was to come. The 2 guards lingered near him, hovering, trying to assert their authority. But they didn't realize that Marcus had navigated far more dangerous waters than this gymnasium. As a student's name was called, the applause erupted. The audience was no longer wholly engaged with the ceremony. The taller guard leaned closer. "I'm trying to help you here, all right? This doesn't need to escalate." Marcus's eyes flicked to him. "You don't have the authority to help." A tense pause followed. Walsh drew back slightly, reconsidering his next move. The stocky guard, Garvin, was less patient. He didn't appreciate being challenged, his hand hovering near his radio again. Just then, a man stood up slowly from the back rows. At first, he went unnoticed. He didn't speak, merely crossed his arms and observed the unfolding scene. Clean-shaven and solidly built, he took a seat near the aisle, his gaze fixed on the confrontation. Another man stood up on the opposite side, taking in the situation with a calm intensity. Then a third stood, all of them exuding an unwavering presence that drew the attention of those around them. Marcus remained seated, unwavering. He had led these men through countless trials, and they had each been through life or death situations together. Garvin leaned down again, this time with urgency in his voice. "You're making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be." Marcus turned his head slowly, deliberately. "And you're not listening." Garvin's hand twitched toward the radio. But before he could speak, the voice of the man in the center aisle cut through the tension. "Is there a reason this man is being harassed?" The voice was clear and commanding, the kind that didn't rise to demand attention but dropped just enough to capture it. It belonged to Nathaniel Gray, a former comrade of Marcus's who had been by his side during their most harrowing moments in the field. Garvin looked up, taken aback. "Who are you?" Nathaniel stepped forward. "I asked you a question." Walsh raised a hand, attempting to regain control. "Sir, we've got this under control." "No," Nathaniel replied, sharper now. "You don't." Another figure stood from the far bleachers, then another. 4 of them now, each exuding a quiet strength. Marcus remained seated, composed, but he felt a surge of solidarity from his fellow servicemen. The entire left side of the gym was now focused on the growing confrontation. Whispers rippled through the crowd as students and parents alike sensed the shift. "I don't care what your orders are," Nathaniel said firmly. "You don't put your hands on that man. You don't tell him to move." The silence in the gym was palpable, not out of fear but respect, a collective understanding of the gravity of the situation. Marcus finally looked up at Nathaniel, acknowledging him with a slight nod. The tension remained, but the air had shifted. The guards were outnumbered. The ceremony continued, but it felt distant, as if the world outside had faded. The names of graduates were called. The crowd clapped politely, yet eyes remained glued to the unfolding drama. Garvin shifted his stance again, leaning in closer to Marcus. "I'm trying to help you, man. We don't want any trouble." Marcus locked eyes with him. "You don't have the authority to offer help." A moment passed, and Garvin hesitated. Realizing he was outmatched, Nathaniel stood firm, arms crossed, an unwavering sentinel. "You're embarrassing yourselves. You're one breath away from making this worse." Garvin glanced at Walsh, who looked increasingly uncertain. The guards hadn't anticipated backup like this. "I don't care what your orders are," Nathaniel reiterated. "You don't touch that man. You don't tell him to move." The gym was alive with a tension that was electric. Marcus sat, still and composed, ready for whatever would come next. He had fought for his country and understood the weight of honor. The guards had crossed a line, and now they would understand the consequences. As the ceremony pressed on, the atmosphere remained thick with anticipation. Names continued to be called, but the focus had shifted. The crowd was no longer just celebrating the graduates. They were witnessing a moment that spoke to the very essence of dignity and respect. "Sir, this is your last warning," Garvin finally said, his voice wavering. Marcus didn't budge. "To do what exactly?" Garvin stepped forward, his hand brushing against his belt. But before he could act, Nathaniel's voice rang out again. "If you touch him, you'll answer to me." Garvin turned to him, defiance etched on his face. "And who the hell are you?" "I'm the man who's telling you this ends right now." A school official noticed the escalating situation and hurriedly approached, whispering something to the guards. The moment was thick with tension, and as the guards weighed their options, the respect for Marcus grew among the audience. Marcus exhaled slowly, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. He was no stranger to conflict, but this moment was different. The guards finally began to back off, recognizing they had lost this battle. They turned to leave. The gym erupted in applause, but it wasn't just for the graduates. It was a recognition of unity, of standing together against injustice. Marcus felt a swell of pride as he glanced at Nathaniel and the others. They had come to support him without a second thought. After the ceremony, as families embraced and celebrated, Marcus made his way outside. The sun was now dipping low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the parking lot. He spotted Caleb near the flagpole, surrounded by friends, his diploma in hand and a beaming smile on his face. As Marcus approached, Caleb's eyes lit up. "Dad," he called out, rushing toward him. They met in a tight embrace, and the world around them faded away. "I'm so proud of you, son," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Did you see everything?" Caleb asked, his excitement bubbling over. "Those guys tried to kick you out. What was that about?" Marcus chuckled softly, ruffling his son's hair. "Yeah, but I had some old friends watching my back." Caleb's face turned serious. "I wanted to walk off the stage, Dad. I couldn't just let them do that to you. I know, and that's why you didn't. Marcus replied. You showed strength by staying put. It takes a lot to stand your ground, son. Caleb looked around, noticing the group of men who had come to support his father. Who are they? They're my brothers, Marcus said, nodding toward Nathaniel and the others. Men I fought alongside, who would do anything to protect each other. Caleb's eyes widened, a newfound admiration blossoming within him. That was powerful, he said softly. Marcus smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. It was, and it's a lesson worth remembering. As they walked toward the parking lot, Caleb's friends joined them, laughter and chatter filling the air. The day had been filled with celebration, but the undercurrent of respect and unity lingered. As they reached the truck, Marcus opened the door for Caleb. What do you want to eat? He asked, glancing over his shoulder at the bustling crowd. Waffle House. Caleb grinned. We should celebrate properly. Waffle House it is. Marcus chuckled, climbing into the driver's seat. As they pulled out of the lot, the sun casting a golden hue over the road ahead, Marcus felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. This day wasn't just about Caleb graduating. It was about standing strong against adversity, about honor, and about the bonds forged in the fires of life. The truck hummed along the winding coastal road, and Marcus stole glances at Caleb, who was animatedly recounting the day's events to his friends in the back seat. The laughter echoed in the cab, a sound that warmed Marcus's heart. Dad, why didn't you say anything to those guards? Caleb asked, suddenly serious. Marcus considered his answer, because sometimes silence speaks louder than words. I wanted them to see that I'm not afraid, that I won't be pushed around, but I also wanted to show you how to handle conflict with dignity. Caleb nodded, processing his father's words. I get it. You were strong. Strength isn't just about how loud you can be. Marcus continued. It's about how you carry yourself in tough moments. You showed that today, too. After a moment of silence, Caleb spoke again. I'm glad those guys backed off. They didn't know what they were dealing with. Exactly, Marcus said, smiling, and they learned a valuable lesson today. As they drove on, the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. For Marcus, this day would forever be etched in his memory. Not just for the graduation, but for the unity and respect that had filled the air. They arrived at Waffle House, the familiar sight bringing a sense of comfort. As they walked inside, Marcus felt the warmth of family and friendship surrounding him, a reminder that they were never alone in their journey. In that moment, both father and son understood that true strength lay not in confrontation but in standing together, in support and in love. And as they settled into their booth, laughter and stories flowing freely, Marcus knew that he had not only witnessed Caleb's graduation but had also passed down a legacy of resilience and honor, a legacy that would endure through the years. Together, they celebrated not just the end of one chapter, but the beginning of many more to come, bound by love, respect, and the unbreakable bond of family.